What's up, guys? Welcome to I Just Want to Know. I'm Alan K.
Karmel Humphrey rocking the Warren Bears. What you know about the Warren Bears, y'all?
I honestly don't know anything about the Warren Bears.
Oh, my God.
But I do know, and this is the month of February, which is amazing because it's actually the month of my birthday.
Hey.
So the February 22nd, shoot, holla at the DM. This might come out after that, so who knows. But February is also the Black History Month.
Oh, what?
Now, crazy. Karmel, would you know anything about Black History Month?
I know a little bit.
But you know what's crazy? So you mentioned to me before we even talked about this that you think we should get rid of it. And
100%.
It got me reflecting back onto when I heard this old Morgan Freeman interview, I think from like 2005 almost, of when it happened. So now, Karmel, with that being said, why do you think we should get rid of Black History Month?
So in reference to the Morgan Freeman clip, it's the same reason he's talked about. Like, why you can't relegate all of Black history to 1 month.
Agreed.
And by doing so, you basically, again, marginalize us again, and then kind of set up the rest of the year for just what? Like, I mean, there's Black history all throughout the year. Every single month, there's something monumental that Black people have accomplished. So then to give us a month, it's almost like, one, it's also another distinction that we never asked for. Like whether it's, affirmative action or, I don't even like historical Black colleges. Like all the stuff, like why do we need to be separated again?
Again, right.
Like you're doing that again. And like I get we're celebrating Black history, but America is Black history. Everything about America is Black history. So then to say, oh, you guys get this, it's again pushing us out.
So now where do you think that should start, that change? Because I do agree with you, right? I do agree. I think that Black history is a part of all history. And that also goes for Asian history, guys, if you can tell, whatever, right? Because just like there's Black history, there's Asian History Month, which isn't celebrated as much.
No.
But then also I think March is Women's Month, I think.
So.
I believe so.
I think April is Arab history.
And that's what I'm saying, right? I in my opinion, the more and more that you keep everything marginalized, the more and more it doesn't like actually join us together. It keeps us separated. It actually
100%.
segregates us. Because because the word diversity, in my opinion, is just a more educated way of saying differences coming together, right? But differences coming together naturally, in my opinion, again, points prejudices out because it separates everybody and still segregates everybody naturally, which is the principle of prejudice. And then obviously with those differences, you're going to try to find what's superior to the next. So instead of doing that and enhancing those differences or promoting those differences, I think we should be promoting similarities. So just like we're saying, in my opinion, where we should start is saying that, hey, instead of saying there's Black history or Asian history or anything else, this is history in general, right? Yes. And I do think that starts with teaching the curricula in schools and also with a lot of other differences in schools like we talked about in previous episode. Check that one out. But I think the history should be changed. I think that we should just start incorporating everything because because when it comes like the Black history and in that 1 month, all we do is talk about the same people: Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman. But there's so much more. And that's the thing is all we do is we only teach people about the glorified things. But what about the negativity that's well a part of, American history? They talk about the lynchings, the segregation, the fact that Martin Luther King didn't die, he got assassinated. And that kind of, as much as brutal as that might be, it needs to be taught because there's no other way to teach compassion amongst people than to be blunt, honest about this is what the actual history is.
So to that point, like you asked, where do we start with change? That would be my first place is education. Like we have world history and we have American history. Like there should be a semester or two on cultural histories, like not just in America, but abroad. Like first in America, whether it's, the Japanese that were here, the Blacks, Hispanics, and that's another thing. I think because we label like white and then Black and Asian, we don't look at whites and see them as separate entities. Like there's Irish, there's Italian, right? There's like in Southern California, there's a whole area of like Danish people that lived in like Lakewood, Cerritos area. No one talks about, the Danish here in America. Like it's just white. So then I think that becomes a problem too, because then people don't even know their culture. Like if you're a Irish American, like you don't really look at yourself as learning about, Celtic culture and all that. You're just white. So I think starting there in our education system is primary. And yeah, the thing is, I don't know that people want to talk about, I shouldn't say people, but they don't want to bring up the real truths about, if I can just stick to Black history, because it's easier when you control the narrative and the story to avoid those things. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things like people don't realize, even like when it comes to like Cinco de Mayo, mm-hmm. people think that's Mexican history or Mexican Independence
Day, and it's
Mexican Independence is in September, right? Like Cinco de Mayo is a celebration of a battle, I think, and when the major beer factories establishment was saved by a militia of Mexicans. Has nothing to do with independence.
Right, and Mexico doesn't even celebrate Cinco de Mayo.
They don't, not at all. Yeah. So it's like, but then who created that? Who made this a thing now? So it's like those start becoming so ingrained in our culture, in our history, in our everyday living. Like it'd be hard to take out Black history. It'd be hard to take out Cinco de Mayo. So since we're not going to take those things out, let's add something into the curriculum for kids to learn what true ethnic history and culture is about.
Well, I think it'd be a bigger statement if we're like, hey, you know what? Having a month delegated only to Black people is actually destroying the unity that we're trying to fight for, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I don't think we want to be trying to become superior to the next person. We actually want to be all equal and all the same. And I think that's the point of all of this.
Yeah.
And I think, in order for you to run, you have to walk, and before you have to walk, you have to learn how to crawl, mm-hmm. right? And mm-hmm. I think in the beginning, I think it was good because you have Black history, brings awareness to Black culture mm-hmm. in America and all these other cultures into America. Mm-hmm. And now that we have this awareness, and we've had this awareness for years, now like the progression of society and integrating it properly, now we just should put it all together into one history and be like, look, this is American history. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just like those studies that show when those kids like go to kindergarten and everything, Black, white, Indian, yellow, purple, whatever, they don't see race. Mm-hmm. Race is taught. Like that person being Black, that's taught. You being Black, me being Asian, we're taught that you're Black and I'm Asian.
Completely.
If we and if we're never told that dividend, we wouldn't perceive it to be such. Ever. So again, I think we do, now that we're at this point where we're pushing for more things reforming things to be more equal, we should treat everything like it's equal, and so that we can promote, togetherness, agreeableness amongst everybody, and be compassionate.
And I think that is a great point, is, crawl before you walk and walk before you run. I just am not certain that the powers that may be care that much. I don't know that they do. Like there's a guy named Daryl Davis who did a interview on Joe Rogan's podcast. So he has a promo for Joe Rogan, but like it's a great right? Like he needs it. But it's a great interview that talks about this guy who, as a Black man, mm-hmm. started interviewing Klansmen.
Oh, you know what? I've been meaning to watch that, but I will.
It is fascinating because he grew up not understanding what racism was, because he traveled the world. His dad, I think, was like a UN dignitary, and he spent 2 years in like several countries. I was in 30-some countries before I was like 10. So he's like, when I came and settled in, I think, Chicago, and he got like his first taste of racism, his parents explained him what it was. He's like, I had never even heard the word before. Right. So I was just completely like, just ran over with this, like, what? That exists? Like, I've been around every culture on this globe and no one treated me like this.
Right.
So then he came from the standpoint, like, if you don't know me, how can you hate me? And he went on with that and just interviewed person after person that supposedly hated them, and through education began to like make friends with like high-ranking Klansmen. Right. So I'll save you this. I don't want to ruin it, but like that's the whole point. Is like it is education. It is unlearning and then relearning, and it's a lot of like people having to understand like you only act that way because you've been taught that way.
Yes.
There's no reason for you other than what you were taught to treat me this way, and then we have to start changing our curricula, because like a lot of the books he talks about that people learned from taught that blacks were inferior, taught that we had smaller brains, taught all these things, and from coming from a book, you think it's authority here. You learning, oh, this is truth. I mean, our Constitution at one point called us 3/5 of a human. So like all these things were like the truths of our country. And
the
that's
truth.
why,
The truth.
The truth. And that's why I
right.
always push the fact that truth and facts are different, because that was a truth at one time.
Right.
So, and it changed. So like you have to start with training people to understand that at a young age, with equality and understanding and compassion, all that. And then allow kids, because kids on their own don't have a problem with each other.
They don't.
You watch kids play, like you mentioned. You watch kids play, they're fine. I don't care if you're black, white, or purple, like you said. They're fine. It's something happens where someone tells them something. And even for myself, like I grew up in Linwood and Compton before I moved to Downey, and Linwood and Compton is predominantly black.
Right.
And so I didn't really have the exposure to a lot of different cultures. But in my house, I was never taught race. Mm-hmm. My dad was in the military, and he wasn't a big we black, we this, we that. We're just
it is what it is.
We are. So when I moved to Downey, I didn't feel like I was black until I had my one taste of racism that I mentioned in the previous episode. I'm like, oh, this is the thing.
This is a real thing, right?
So okay, and it didn't stop me from associating with my friends were all colors, all races, all religions, whatever. And to this day, it's the same thing. But that there's a systematic change that has to happen where we allow kids to teach us in a way.
So now, in your opinion, with, and I'm not trying to put the whole black culture on your shoulders, but as a black person, I can put it on it, right? Yeah. But now, how do you think the curricula should change? Like, what things would you integrate in? Because like we talked about earlier, we know about the basic things that happened, segregation that happened in the 60s, and everything in the not revolution, but everything that's kind of evolved from that. So now, what parts of black history do you think would be good to put in? Because obviously not all history needs to be put in there. I think we can omit certain things. Like I think the whole thing with Christopher Columbus can be omitted.
Oh, God.
Because that is just a complete bullshit of what he was.
See, and that to a point, I would say remove completely, because if we taught you the real history, it would jack you up so much,
right,
that it wouldn't do any good.
It wouldn't do any right.
So I would say
omit that. Right,
omit it completely.
So now, what parts of like I said, what parts of black history would you like to add in there?
I think I know now the slavery component has been changed to indentured servitude, and that's BS. Like, let's call it what it is. But at the same time, let's also understand that there was black people before slavery here. Like, there's a book called They Came Before Columbus, as you just mentioned, Columbus, by Dr. Van Sertima, that talks about blacks being in the Americas way before any Portuguese or Spanish or Italians, and understanding that a lot of them built some of the things that we have today in our culture. Like Pio Pico, who the city of Pico Rivera is named after, was a black man.
No, I don't know that.
No one knows that.
But
you can go to his memorial and his tribute and his I think museum and see the dude's black.
So that's something you'd want to add in there in the curriculum.
What else? Like just teaching more than, like you said, more than Harriet Tubman and frickin' Frederick Douglass. It's the same four people. Like there's so many other black figures in American history that, whether it's street light, or x-rays, or, the cell phone, all these people are black inventors.
Right. You know what? I also think there'd be some real emphasis put like Crips and Bloods and gangs in there.
Sure.
Because it's a pretty big part of American history. Like as much, I know it's a negative part, but it's kind of like, I think that from like a cultural standpoint, be like, hey, why did people have to conform to gangs? Why did these neighborhoods have to be here? What are like the crack epidemic and and the crack cocaine epidemic, the drugs and things like that.
If you bring up the Crips and Bloods, you also have a lot of other gangs and mob and mafias and all that to bring up as well. And if you bring up the crack epidemic, you might step on some toes because people think the crack epidemic was, planned by the government.
The government.
So and that's why people avoid those things. But even like the Black Panthers, how the Black Panthers not talked about in American history.
And they played a big part.
To this day,
right? If
you're familiar with WIC,
the food thing,
right, was in large part to the Black Panthers.
I did not know that.
Yes, and so what's funny is if you go on like Snopes or like fact checking, they say it's not true, it's not necessarily true that they did. But if you go, there's a article published in the Stanford library. It's hard to find now, where it shows that the Black Panthers are listed as one of the founders of WIC, or another program that actually evolved into WIC. So it's like, why do you not want to give them their credit? Because they were vilified by the government at that time as being a very antagonistic and aggressive group.
Right.
They're out feeding women and children. Like, how is this?
Like, how is that not like promoted because it's a good thing?
Exactly. But then the whole Black Panthers was like, destroyed internally with a whole bunch of other things we won't get into. But like, the Black Panthers. I always mention Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, right. That's another thing.
That's a huge thing.
Huge.
But if you bring up that, you also bring up how it ended, which is another black mark, for lack of a better term.
No pun intended.
No pun intended on our country, because there's a lot of, evidence to say that it was done by, it was like bombed by retired, or what do you call it? Disserviced, or what do you call it? An air, like something to take it out of, they don't use it anymore. Like a military air, like planes and jets, they don't use anymore.
Okay.
But you could tell it was a U.S. military plane that bombed this whole entire city.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you really can't bring it up without causing, some people to look at us as being, our own worst enemy. So I think there has to be a way that kind of somehow teaches those things in a very careful manner. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's a lot of black eyes our country has given and owns that they need to own up to. But like, we're past it, right? We've moved on. It's not that long ago that Jim Crow existed, so let's not act like we're 100% better. But like, let's start talking about it, so at least there can actually be some healing. 'Cause I don't think our country is actually healing because we don't talk about it.
Well, I think and I think we keep on going back to, like, we're talking about reparations. Like, yes, you know what? I apologize that this country, well, I'm not responsible for it. And neither is anybody that's living right now. Are we responsible for slavery happening back then?
Yeah.
But again, the goal should be equality, not to be superior to the next person over. Mm-hmm. And I do notice that I do have some friends that are black that like will take this month and run with it, that is glorified. It's kind of like, I don't know, like your birthday, right? You get celebrated for who you are for your birthday, and everybody kind of loves that attention. Yeah. And I feel like with some people with this month, they kind of run with it, and they're like, "Oh, all the attention's on me. It's about me." Mm-hmm. But then that doesn't. If the goal is trying to get to equality, trying to get everybody to look over your differences, and then just be equal, then don't do things that seclude you for an entire month. Or
and that even goes the whole thing with like BET, which like, I've never been a fan of, and again, it's not a black network. If you didn't know, that's owned by Viacom, which is a Jewish company. But anyway, like I didn't want that. I didn't ask for BET. Like I don't, and I watch regular TV shows. And I want regular shows with regular black folks and white folks.
But what's crazy? If you were to put like white entertainment though, it'd be considered
100%,
racist.
100%
if you had like an all white college, it'd be racist.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I just don't. Oh my God, I don't know.
But there's so many things and so many layers to this country that when we start peeling things back, I think people will see things that they don't want to see. And even like, you brought like an all-white college, like historical black colleges, for example. Like the #1 historical black college is Howard, right? They call it the Black Harvard. It's named after a white general who wasn't necessarily nice to black people. So I've always thought that was weird. Like most historical black colleges have white origins. So I'm like, it's not really ours. Like, like I get it. It now is, but like, let's look at like what are you really asking? And when it comes to educating people, like, what do you want to know? Like, if we start bringing up a lot of things that in black culture, like, it's not going to be pretty, but that's okay. Like,
that's okay, right?
We get to talk about it. For my company, Black Brew, we posted a post on Instagram regarding Thomas Alexander Dumas, who was a French general. He's like the highest black general ever in the French army. And he came to power in like the late 1700s. Mm-hmm. So he's like very well documented for like winning tons of wars. He led the Army of the Alps. Napoleon talked about this guy, very well decorated guy. But his claim to fame is not even his military background. It's his son. His son is Alexander Dumas, who wrote The Three Musketeers and The Man in the Iron Mask and The Count of Monte Cristo. Most people don't know he's black. Those are the things I think kids need to learn, because I think those things inspire kids to want to be a better version of themselves. And it's not even so much about being black. Oh, he did that and he's black. I can do that. Right. I don't think I ever heard a black person give a speech on Black History Month or something about this black person did that and made me feel like I want to be more black. Right. It just made me want to be more me. Like, oh, they did that. I can do that. They're capable. I'm capable. Like, it allowed me to be equal or feel like I was equal. Right. I don't want any more than I'm due. You know,
agreed.
When it comes to reparations, I think some people are on that fence one way or the other because I don't want to like take more than what I should. But the thing is, a lot of cultures have been given reparations for similar atrocities, and some not nearly as bad as slavery, whether it's the Holocaust or Japanese or Native Americans, or there's several ethnic groups who have received millions of dollars for their atrocities done to them, but we haven't received anything. And I even think they say the 40 acres and a mule that we're supposed to get, you know, with interest and over time, and what it would look like now would be just, I think, $17 trillion over that many years and that many people. Okay, so we're not going to get that, right?
Right.
But, like, what was it? I think there was a law passed for the LGBTQ community to get reparations for, like, what do you call it? The marriage law where, you know, your same-sex partner and all that stuff, but the things that happen to them in tax laws. And
they get the same benefits.
Right. So all the stuff that they miss for not having those things, there's a law being passed for them to get reparations. And I'm like, wait a minute. So if I'm a black gay man, I don't get reparations for just being a straight black man? It's like, just what?
That doesn't make sense, right?
Makes no sense.
And then it pushes for people to start feeling hostile or start feeling a certain
100%.
Way about their certain people, because it's like, well, just because this guy has a sexual preference or a gender preference and I don't, like, now all of a sudden he gets this and again, extra whatever.
It's not like and I understand why they're getting that.
Right.
But how was that conversation happening before this one? Like, I don't get that.
Right. There's a bigger minority group and a bigger minority agenda that's been going on a lot longer than this one is. Right. But I mean, yeah, I agree.
So, I'm not saying just the conversation alone causes problems. I know there was a guy who went before Congress to have this conversation, and it was like, oh, we can't do that. We don't have this. We can't do that. I'm like, you're spending trillions on defense. You can't spend one less trillion. Like, you could do something. Like, and we can't have a conversation about it. Like, he's getting shut down. Like, every conversation reparations come up, they're just getting shut down. I'm like, why? Like, are we saying this didn't happen? Another thing I know you brought up, people talk about, well, I didn't cause it. No one here alive caused it. But the benefits are still here. Like, there are several companies whose origins are slave-based. Chase Bank is one of them. I think BNP, I think Ameritrade. There's a lot of banks were started with, like, slave owner and plantations, and then like that was a huge commodity. Some of the railroads and some of the shipping industry, a lot of them were slave based. So you've got billions of dollars that you've earned to this day from those origins. Yeah, but I don't think they're responsible to pay it back. I think they are.
I think all right. So I think that if those companies who you can say that they started off of some of those principles, and if they do have an excess and surplus, I think they can take it upon themselves to kind of bring awareness to things in general. But I don't think you should just start paying people back based on a bloodline or based on anything else.
But the thing is, it's happened. There's precedent.
Just because it's happened doesn't mean it's entitled. You know what I mean?
Why not though? I'm saying if Jews, if Japanese, if Native Americans, I mean, so many ethnic groups have received something.
Have Jews and and Japanese people in America?
Yes.
I gotta look this up, but I didn't. Like, so what? There's been. I have to know this. Like, so like what? Like, I'm
money.
Curious.
The number? I don't know the number, but
so they were given allowances and things like that.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's not. I don't know what the numbers are, but like, it's definite. Like.
So you don't think
you can look it up.
So you don't think affirmative action right now is enough to kind of like, I don't want to say, now mind you, it's kind of tough to say when somebody's fully paid back and fully for what they've suffered or what their ancestors have suffered, right? But you know, like there are measures though, like affirmative action measures that have been put in place to get themselves out of that rut and give themselves a little bit promoted. Like we talked about in our education thing, and we talked about a racism thing. Yeah. You know, you to have the same credentials as me on a college application, you're going to get in way before I do, because based on the fact you put black and before I put Asian. Sure. You know. Yeah. I mean, so there's still a lot of that.
But that still means, but I'm still working, and I'm working to get. I'm basically just trying to get a job. Like, I'm still going to work for that salary. Like, I'm not just giving it.
No, and
I understand how people are going to say, well, you should give people money. Yes. Like, we're literally going to. Here's another thing. People don't know that, like, Haiti is the first country ever established by slaves. Like slaves that left either the Caribbean or America established Haiti in 1804. It's when they earned their independence. And when I say earned, they earned it. They had to fight the French, and on top of that, fight America to earn the right to have their own country. Now, when they earned their independence, France declared that the loss of slaves who left and then created Haiti was due to them to be paid back because slaves were a commodity. So Haiti was forced to pay 94 million francs back to the French in the 1800s.
Did they do it?
They're still paying it today.
They're still paying it.
You know how much money that is in 200 years ago? 94 million francs to a bunch of slaves? Like, how are they paying? And guess what? America and Germany and I think Britain also backed France's claim on that.
Wow. I know that America recently paid back England for the Boston Tea Party thing. Really recently. Pretty recently, yeah. I forgot what it is. And I'll look that up and I'll post it on the I Just Want to Know podcast Instagram after this episode. But there is something where they end up repaying it. But I do feel like though, like some of those past things, you just like it's a part of history, let it go. What did Gandhi say? An eye for eye, make the whole world go blind. And I don't want to try to use like really, kind of like basic quotes, but it's true. Like that's the part. Like, hey, you know what? I mean, things happen. History happens. To think that you're gonna get something back for it, it's kind of
So to think that we're gonna get it, yeah, we're probably not. But the problem where I'm having is why we can't have the conversation.
No, we can have the conversation.
No, I'm saying it does. I'm saying when it comes to Congress as soon as it goes, it gets shut down. Like it's just not gonna happen. So if like England's getting paid back for the Boston, England doesn't need any money.
I agree.
But see, the problem now, here's the other issue is because blacks are so splintered and segmented, who do you pay the money back to? That's another problem. People are like, we're just going to give each black like $10,000 or like, so we don't have a central area or anything to say here's what you pay back. Even in the NAACP, it's not a black organization. It was created by white people for black people. So we don't have a central place to say, hey, give this people the money and then they can disperse it. You have England, you have, even the Jews have more of a centralized way of being paid back things. We don't have that.
I think it'd be chaotic though too, because then I think everybody would 23andMe themselves and be like, oh, look, I'm part black too. Like, hey, I'm part black too. I'm part black too.
Which is if you go back in history, there was a $5% Indian. Or there was a nickel Indian. It was a term where if I was 5% Indian, I got money.
Yeah,
It's a lot of white people who jumped on that. Oh, I'm 5% Indian, and then bam, they got money for that. Right. So you're right. There will be chaos.
But we're already trillions of dollars in debt. You know what I mean? As a nation.
To who?
To China, I think.
Okay, so we'll go to China and get our money.
Well, I think that's funny. There's that one quote that's like the world's like $22 trillion in debt. Like to who? Like the Decepticons?
Right.
Like, who the hell? Who the world?
Like we're all
owe somebody money to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to go back,
there's so many. So then to get back to the point about black history, like there's so many things that I think will unveil other atrocities and other negativities that, I don't think we should have to bring those things up. But there are things that we could teach, like I mentioned, the Black Panthers and, even like, the history of rock and roll, history of, modern music. We could talk about some of the great, artists and, Charles Drews and doctors, there's other things we could talk about other than, again, Harriet Tubman's and stuff like that.
I think there should be a part of it. I just think you should give as much as you want to give the rosy rose, you give the fucking thorns of the rose too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, because I know that for me, when I found out the truth about Christopher Columbus, or I found out the real truth about lynchings and everything else, it makes you feel a certain way.
Sure.
Like, am I programmed to think a certain way now? Am I conditioned? Because when you become quote unquote woke and you find out the truth behind a lot of these things, like the internment camps and everything else, you're like, man, I think I'm being taught a certain way. And I do feel like when it comes down to the education curricula, what it used to be is really white based. If you look at
100%.
it, because everything is kind of resorts back to a white mindset. Like, well, the black people, this is what they contributed to us. Like, they are us. Yeah. Asians are us. Like that's, and I think that's, again, but I think, like we're saying from the beginning, we need to get to a point where, hey, history is not as rose colored as we want to be. You know, war isn't just as cool as it is. Like, yo, there is a lot of people that didn't want to be a part of it that still fought. You know, a lot of these people fought through slavery, through all these other things to be America. You know, Asians built railroads to do this, and this. Like, get back to that, because I think that the more and more that people are actually like woken up to these kind of things, A, they're not as hostile towards the truth when it gets presented. B, you're not being brainwashed into a certain agenda. And C, as a general whole, you will appreciate way more of how this country was built. And I think when you find out the actual bloodshed and the tears lost and everything like that, like, you actually become, when the truth presents itself, you just know how to approach everything from there on out with a lot more assertiveness.
Sure. And that's I'm all about that. That's, like, if there was schools that were built just like that, like we would completely just show A to Z what happened and how it is, and just let it just hang on its own valor. Like, I think it'd be great. Like, my mom, she asked me the day, she goes, "What do you think the N-word originated from?" And I'm like, "Do you want my answer?"
Do you want
and she knows me, and she gives me, "Oh my God." What? So look, I'm just gonna tell you, I know, but let me hear your side of the story. So she starts talking about, you know, how white folks said this and this said that, and I said, okay, cool. That's the typical people thing. But let's look at the actual makeup of language. Like, the word negro in Latin was black, and in Spanish is also black. And then, of course, there was, like, you know, a bastardized version of that word that became a derogatory statement. But now, the thing about it is, we are conditioned to think the way I speak is a certain way, and who I am a certain way. Like, again, black people aren't just people who grew up in Compton. They're people who are in Jamaica or Brazil. There's black people all up and down the Americas. They're all black. Just because they speak Spanish or Portuguese or English, they're still black. But when you say someone is Hispanic, like, what are you really saying? They're not actually Spanish. Now, they may have Spanish blood because Spain came over here and colonized part of this country, but they're Mexican, or they're Guatemalan, or they're Salvadorian, and they don't speak their native language.
Right.
And to that, she's like, "What do you mean they don't speak their native language?" I'm like, "They're not in Spain. They speak Spanish because they were colonized." So even that word has, like, everything has another layer that we're not looking at. Like, we speak English, but we're not in England.
Right.
Right? So all these things are because there's something that happened way before you start talking about that thing that you need to look at. Like, if we're sitting there talking, and sure, this lady's speaking Spanish, and I learned Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish to a degree, but I learned, like, Castilian Spanish. It was, like, real proper. It's like the Spanish you would learn if you were in Spain.
Oh, so, like, if you're, like, go down to East LA right now,
I'm sketchy.
Yeah.
You know, they'll understand me, but they're like, they'll look at me weird.
Right.
But, like, so, like, when I hear someone speaking Spanish that's El Salvadorian or Argentinian Spanish is very, like, it feels almost Frenchy. So I'm like, you hear all these people are speaking a different version of Spanish because Spain came and colonized these countries. And now these people, when you don't speak Spanish and you're Mexican or whatever, they look at you weird. Like, "Oh, you're Mexican? You don't speak Spanish?" I'm like, "You hear what you're saying?
Yeah, right.
You don't speak the language of your colonizer? And you're holding that against someone?" Like, we're already degrading people because of the atrocity that happened to them. You're not succumbing to it. Like, you don't speak the language. Like, it's just weird because so we have this whole mindset about something. So that's a whole past the N-word. Like, the N-word is a whole nother layer that before we even get to that.
Well, see, I feel like there's a lot of value to be taught, because I mean, look at right now. You just woke me up to this shit. You're right, because you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people should learn that.
So I said that because my mom, after like this hour conversation, was like, "I know I shouldn't ask you that question," but because I said that's what people should be taught, though. Like, I get the N-word is a very, to this day, powder keg of a word. It is very right. And it probably always will be. But the fact of the matter is, we're not looking at the underlying layer of being labeled. Like, I'm labeled black, you know, and someone is labeled, or I'm labeled African American, or you're labeled Asian American. Like, there is not a Euro-American label, because whites, Europeans, created this country and this system, and they're not going to label themselves.
They're not going to label themselves, right?
They say, "Well, we're this, and then you guys are that." And I remember one time in Vegas, I was getting my car wiped by this, I wouldn't say a bum, but a guy down his luck. And he said something about being black. And I said, yeah, it's cool, right? He said, yeah, but man, you know, we got to rise up and get it. And I said, oh, it's black folks, it's black folks. And he kept saying it, it just struck me so hard. I said, well, first of all, we got to get away from calling ourselves black folks because we weren't called black folks to begin with. Someone called us black. And he stopped wiping my window. He's like, oh. I said, so the person who labeled us is the person who owns you. Like I call my dog what I want to call my dog.
Right.
So if I can name something, I own it. And he's like, man, I ain't never heard that in my life.
Yeah, no, me neither, right? Man. I'm sitting there like, oh.
So that's the narrative. We have to change the very basics of how we think about ourselves first, and then that's where things start changing. So to bring this all full circle, Black History Month, I didn't call it that. I didn't create this. Someone created it for me. I was like, here you go.
Here you go. Right. It's kind of almost like, it's almost offending because it's like, because it's like you guys are so different, but we're going to kind of praise you for being different. But this is our excuse to say that we acknowledged you, but you're still not a part of regular history.
Exactly. That's the whole underlying why I don't want the month. Not to mention, in that same month, we have 2 white presidents and a chubby white baby who shoots people with arrows. None of those people have anything to do with Black history. Like this fat baby shooting people with arrows. Hey, how's that Black history? And Lincoln and Washington. What is this? And the whole thing of it being the shortest month, that's a whole nother subject. But like that alone. I mean, come on, right? What's that Black history?
A little chubby. I was like, who's this little chubby douche? Oh, Cupid.
Right.
Oh, motherfucker. Oh, man.
I don't get it.
Well, you guys, that was
Come on, man.
Let me know what you guys think.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm not sorry. That was it's. I'm woke. I'm woke now. I'm aware of this now.
Now we're here.
Yeah. These labels things. It goes deeper than just Black History Month. Oh my God.
It does, man.
Wow. Well, you guys tell me now. Let me know what you guys think.
Yeah.
Hope you guys learned a lot about this because I just learned a lot.
That's what we do.
Comment below on the video. Check us out. Subscribe to the channel, and then also check out Karmel's Black Brew thing as well. There's a lot of history about that.
Get you some.
And we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Peace.